Okay, wrestling fans, welcome. Season 3 is coming to a close of Wrestler Weekly Conversations, and we couldn't have a bigger guest for you. We're so thankful. We are so thrilled to have a man who has been a champion everywhere he's been, and just most recently, NWA World's Heavyweight Champion for over 1,000 days. A huge thrill for us. Nick Aldis is here. Nick, thank you so much for jumping on with us.
Not a problem. Thanks for having me, Mike.
Oh, no problem. So a great time to be a wrestling fan. Even before, as I was kind of getting prepped, I just recently watched the NWA dropped your promo that you cut on Tom Latimer. And you talked me into the building on that one.
Well,
I love
the that's the idea.
Yeah, yeah. So it's really cool to see, especially the NWA name back doing great things in wrestling. What do you think is the appeal that the NWA has to fans today? What does it offer that's different than what's currently in the wrestling landscape?
Well, so that answer kind of comes in two parts, because what you asked, what sort of makes people, what should make people want to watch the NWA, and in theory, the things that make it different should be the thing that in my mind should attract viewers to the brand, and in that I think that I'm only speaking for me, because obviously it's not my company, but I've always believed that what I thought the best approach for the NWA was to really celebrate the tradition, celebrate the rich history of the NWA, and in fact the business, because really prior to the 80s and even through the 80s, the NWA really represented all of professional wrestling in some way, shape, or form. Even though there were very successful promotions that were not officially members, they still sort of interacted. They all, they all kind of orbited the NWA sun, so there was this real legacy there is a legacy to the brand and the organization. So for me, and then, going forward, I sort of, when I was approached about coming on in 2017, my observation at the time was that wrestling was heading in a certain direction, and you can't change that, and that's not, and no one was suggesting that anyone should. But what I noticed was that I started to see most of the promotions were all kind of following one trend, right? They were all kind of leaning into the smaller guys, faster paced matches, more sort of choreography, more kind of outlandish kind of spots and stuff like that. And again, and this is not a criticism of anything. I just noticed that that's where the business was heading.
Absolutely.
In my mind, I felt like it would potentially mean that a gap in the market might open up for a more rugged, sort of physical, more believable, more kind of gritty, authentic type of style and presentation. And it's so hard to kind of articulate that without somebody getting their feelings hurt, and somebody trying to sort of someone trying to sort of misrepresent what you're saying and being like, oh, he's taking a shot at this company or that person or that wrestler or whatever. And it's like, I've never wanted to be in that game.
Yeah.
I'm an entrepreneur, right? Like, so if you're going to get into a competitive market, you need to sort of find a way to have your own USP, and I always believed and always have lobbied for the NWA USP in the market to be focusing on celebrating the history and legacy of those who paved the way, and doing a sort of updated version of that kind of gritty, athletic, dramatic kind of style, prize fight style of pro wrestling.
Absolutely. And I think you guys really have accomplished that, especially with the events that you've had. You were back at the Chase, and the first time wrestling had been in that room in 37 years.
Right.
And to see the Coruscant room updated, but still those lights up there, those
Yeah.
famous lights of theirs.
Yeah.
What was it like to be in a venue like that and wrestling in such a historic place?
It's up there with one of my most treasured memories of my career, honestly. For everything you just said, just for the look of the building, and the Chase have done such a great job of sort of updating that room, but also restoring it. So sort of keeping the look and the feel and the aesthetic of the room, but bringing it up to date. So in many ways, it was kind of a perfect marriage, because in many ways it was sort of symbolic of what I always thought the best approach was for the NWA. Was to do the same thing. Like I've often said that a very basic way of describing what I always tried to sort of bring to my work with the NWA was, if Jim Crockett Promotions never went away, or if Mid-South never went away, what would it look like today? Possibly.
Oh, that's awesome.
So that was kind of my approach. And again, it wasn't because I thought, oh, this is better than anything else, and this, it was just because it was like, well, that's a way to be different. That's a unique product to put out. It's like it's hard to sort of some people can't seem to wrap their head around the idea of an entity or a business trying to be different, without it sort of without it sort of coming across as combative. But yeah, that was for me, and so the Chase was like, when that opportunity presented itself, it was tremendously exciting. It was up there for me with All In, and with the first season of Power, just because they're sort of milestone sort of moments for me personally, because it sort of represented my ability to lead a promotion, right? Like it wasn't like, it's not a I'm not delusional by any stretch. Like,
not at all.
I'm not under the impression that the NWA is in any way sort of competing with the two major companies. But in my mind, it was kind of like it's my body of work in the NWA is sort of, I'm proud of it, because it's a testament to, I was able to sort of take it from Zip to to this, and for one, and look, I didn't do it on my own. There's no doubt.
Of course.
But at the same time, I'll also take my fair share of the credit for it. And it's like, I don't know, I don't feel like there's a lot of guys from my generation that can really point to that and say, hey, for better or worse, I got this thing from there to here, so
yeah, absolutely.
So yeah,
well, and
go ahead.
I was gonna say, and that's the way we've seen it, as fans, is when you won the title. I mean, Tim Storm and Nick Aldis became something that made me care about the NWA championship again. It revived those glory days, and you defended in China. I mean, you became a true world's champion. And then you talk about NWA Power. You guys are back in the studios, and you come out holding the belt with the suit, and it was just, you looked like the world champion. It's because you were being genuine. That's what it was being. And I think you made and I mean this with all sincerity, you made the NWA World Heavyweight Championship a true world's championship again. I know my buddy Scottie, who he met you at the gathering, and he has an NWA belt with all the champion signatures on it, and he had mentioned how important it was to have you sign your name by Harley Races.
That's very, it's always tremendously hard for me to sort of wrap my head around that when I've met folks who have wanted gestures like that, because I don't consider myself in the same in the same bracket, you know, as guys like Harley or Rick, but it's very special to me to know that even to a few people, you know, maybe from my generation or from sort of the generation before, that what I was able to do felt significant enough to kind of be in that company. So yeah, that kind of stuff means a lot.
Oh, and again too, you know, it's for us, I love what you said about what happens if Jim Crockett Promotions didn't stop, right? If Mid-South didn't stop. As a kid, I started trading for tapes. I grew up in the 80s with Hulkamania and the WWF. I lived in New York. But man, as early as I could, I wanted to see, hey, what happened down in Georgia a few years back? What happened in Portland a few years back? I wanted to see all of it. And that's what this, I think you encapsulated it perfectly when you said that. And so you see kind of the direction wrestling is going. There's more options now. It is a modern day spin on the territories. I think it goes to show that, you know, WWE is not the only game in town anymore. And maybe sometimes the goal isn't that national competition, but maybe just having different options out there for people to get behind and follow. What are your thoughts on that? And also too, the current landscape of how many free agents there are out there. Right. I think it gives a lot of folks an opportunity to go to work and do different styles.
Yeah, I think it's, well, you know, time will tell, but I think that there's opportunity for people who are willing to take some risks and be entrepreneurial about it, right? Yeah. I think it's going to take some fresh blood on the business side. Like, I think there's a lot of wrestlers who are still sort of living in that idea of, I just got released from WWE, so, you know, I'll be good. I can just, you know, I'll be able to charge X amount of dollars for independent bookings, and, you know, and that'll be that. And I don't think it's going to go like that. I think it started with the Bucks and Marty Scurll and even me a little bit, and like Ricky Starks is a good example. You know, it's going to come down to the guys who go the extra mile to sort of showcase themselves and present themselves as an act in a new digital world. Like, you know, if I do a seminar or something like that, or I give, you know, like Darius Lockhart called me today just, you know, to ask me for some advice and stuff, you know, and it's like, he's a great example, you know, the guy who's like, he's thinking about this like a business. He's presenting his entire package. He's not waiting around for someone else to say, okay, we're going to sign you and we're going to give you this name and we're going to give you this package and we're going to do this, we're going to do that. Because, you know, you don't have to wait anymore. You can do it. And truthfully, no one knows you better than you. So, you know, the best thing to do now is to, if you didn't like the way that you were presented in WWE or wherever you were, you know, invest some money and present yourself how you want to be presented. Yeah. Because you don't need a show necessarily right away. It's not, you don't have to do it on an independent show. You can do it with vignettes and you know, different versions of content. So I think that what we're going to see is a lot more kind of a lot more events and specials and one-offs and stuff that where the wrestlers who have proven to generate some revenue, you know, either in ticket sales or in pay-per-view or in, you know, downloads or whatever it may be. They're gonna sort of put their money where their mouth is. Kind of a bit like All In. You know, All In was a sort of a perfect example of that. Although All In obviously was, you know, funded by Ring of Honor, so it was a different situation. But not to take anything away from Nick and Matt and Cody, because it was, you know, they still put their reputations at stake. Which is, you know, which is a big risk in, you know, when your market value is everything. But I think you'll see more stuff like that where instead of waiting for a company to, like, I think some of the guys, if they're sitting around waiting for the phone to ring, or they think that someone else is going to pay, and someone else is going to put them on a show, and they're going to make thousands of dollars for one night, to have to be on this thing. I think they're kidding themselves. I think there's money to be made, but the boys are going to have to take part. But when I say the boys, I mean that's an endearing term. But all, the guys and girls, the talent,
absolutely,
they're going to have to take part in some of the risk.
Yeah,
that's where I see the business going. Is that there's
no
enough,
risk, no reward.
There's not enough places for everybody to work and get a full-time salary.
Yeah,
like that's I saw it plenty at the NWA with a lot of talent who came in and used that platform to make a name for themselves, and then were frustrated at that they weren't able to get a well-paid sort of full-time contract.
Yeah.
The money isn't there.
Yeah.
The economics the economics aren't there. And
of course.
So it's kind of like, I think if people are sort of the guys who are going to make money and be successful are going to be the ones who create a sort of an ecosystem where they can do a little bit over here, then do a little bit over here, and take some more entrepreneurial kind of steps for themselves, and diversify.
Yeah,
I think that's the key, I think.
Yeah, and I think that is a throwback to the old days, because it wasn't foreign. Just because Dusty Rhodes was a star in Florida didn't mean that was the only place I remember seeing Dusty in Georgia, New York, right. Houston, Japan, all over the place. So I think it is, I agree with you. I think it's ripe for something like that. And just even this week, seeing Jonah, the former Bronson Reed in WWE, makes his debut in New Japan and an Impact. Right. So I think there's a lot of validity into having that diversity of different styles. And I think that creates a lot of buzz.
Yeah, I think the also, and again, I don't want to suggest that so I certainly wasn't the first person to do it, or it wasn't part of the first group of people to do it by any means. It's been a thing in Japan for forever, and it's been a thing here and all over the place. But I think this most recent in sort of recent history, when NWA was collaborating with Ring of Honor to bring, which it resulted in All In, and then obviously the rematch with Cody and I, and then Marty and I at the Crockett Cup, and PCO and Brody won the Crockett Cup, and and all these kind of things. I think I think that from that point on, in the modern era, I think the fans sort of understood, like, we don't have to wait around for matchups that we want to see. Like, if there's somebody who may or may not be under contract, or is just very heavily associated with a certain promotion, and people start going, can you imagine if he wrestled so and so over here? Like, there isn't that thing anymore of, oh well, that'll never happen. It's like there's a sort of expectation now, like, no, you guys work it out amongst yourselves and make it happen. And actually, I think that's where I think free agency becomes quite interesting for the right people, because unless the promotions, like, let me put it like this, I don't know why any wrestler would sign a contract with a promotion if they only get paid when they wrestle. And there's an alarming number of those deals being done. I could never understand that. Like, I haven't, my first TNA contract was like that. It was, you sign with us and we'll pay you X amount per show and we'll cover your hotels, and it was kind of like, I was 21 years old. I didn't, I was happy to be working, and it worked out okay for me because I was booked on everything. I was booked solid. But as soon as I got at the end of that first year, I was less than a year into my first deal, and Doug and I won the tag titles. I was calling the office and going, I want to sign a guaranteed money deal.
Yeah.
You know, and that got me a little bit of heat with Terry Taylor, and you know, because it was like, oh, who's this punk kid? He thinks he wants guaranteed money, but I got it.
Yeah.
Because my justification was like, well, you know, you only have to pay me when you book me, but I can't wrestle anywhere else.
Yeah.
You know, and when I thought about it later on, I think, who would sign something like that? If you were a plumber or an electrician or a bricklayer or something, and somebody said, I'll tell you what, I'm going to sign you to a 2-year contract where you can do my electrical work, but I don't need anything doing right now.
Yeah, so you're not getting paid.
An electrician would go, what's wrong with you? You're bonkers. Like, what are you talking about? You know, I'll come and work for you when you need me, but you know,
I'm not solely contracted to you.
The whole point of a coin is like, you're going to take yourself off the market, you pay for it.
No.
You know, so I think that unless my advice to my brethren, you know, my brothers and sisters in the business, is unless they're paying to take you off the market, don't sign a contract. Just say that you're happy to come and work, you know, or sign a non-exclusive.
Absolutely.
Say, hey, I'm happy to sign a non-exclusive contract. But I hope that we see, you know, unless that, because I think that it requires all the wrestlers to sort of, you know, hold themselves to that standard. Yeah. And to not just be a mark and go, oh, I got a contract, you know, just so they can post about it and get some, you know, get some dopamine release from some, you know, Twitter likes. But it's like, you've got to be able to say like, nah, that doesn't make sense that doesn't make business sense.
Absolutely.
I'm going the long way around to say that what I think the positive could be from that is that the guys can have the ability to go, all right, I'm going to come and do this and I'm going to wrestle this guy. Yeah. After that, we'll see where it goes. Again, to your point, much more like the territory system, you know, where it's kind of like, hey, I think there's money in me and him, you know. Yeah. You want to set something up where he and I wrestle on pay-per-view in 6 months? Cool, let's figure it out. Let's set it up. And then we'll see where we go from there. I'll ride off into the sunset and go, you know, go find something else to do, you know, and you start sort of plotting your stuff out like that. There's always going to be, if you're not working for one of the big two, let them, you know, duke it out between themselves in terms of who they're going to sign and, you know, and take off the market because they're assets. But you know, unless there's money, you know, unless there's money exchanging hands sort of on a regular basis, like just stay free and, you know, sort of, you know, book your stuff kind of like you were, you know, like a prize fighter. Yeah. You know, and I think we're going to see more of that because there's too many guys. Yeah. There's just too many guys out there to all get full-time contracts. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I love what you said about the prize fights because, and I've said this for years, I had spoken with somebody else about this and I had said, you know, take WWE, for example. This isn't a knock on WWE, but they've become the star. The wrestlers have become interchangeable. Nobody gets bigger than the brand anymore. And I think you lose value because, I mean, take a look at history, right? Who drew? You go back to the 80s in Texas. It wasn't world class drawing all that money. It was the Von Erichs that were drawing all that money. Same thing when you looked at it was Hulk Hogan. It was all these guys. And when you invest in people, because that's what I buy. I don't buy, you know, the NWA just because of the name means something to me. But man, like we watched the pay-per-view in St. Louis because we wanted to see Aldis and Murdoch. You know, that was the big draw. And I think when you invest in people and you invest in wrestlers, there's that personal connection that you just can't replicate with kind of this canned kind of product, if that makes sense.
I agree 100%. I think one of the most damaging things that happened to the business was when the marketing shifted away from promoting conflict between two characters and went more to focusing on marketing and promote like the promotion itself, the brand. I think that became and actually I wouldn't I wouldn't put all that on WWE. I would put a lot of that
No, yeah.
on. I would put a lot of that on ECW.
Okay, yeah.
And I would put a lot of that on the Monday Night War.
Yeah.
Because I think that's when it really became this thing of, you are watching WCW where the big boys play, not that other place, and then WWF had to then sort of counter it with like, you're watching the World Wrestling Federation, not the Retirement League,
Yeah.
I remember as a fan.
But you're right. You're right.
That was when they started taking those digs at each other. You never heard that before then.
Yeah.
So it was, and so in a way, Vince McMahon, is a tremendous success story to, case study.
Oh, absolutely.
Particularly when it comes to adapting and evolving.
And he has.
Adversity.
Yeah.
He's had so many sort of real big major threats to his business over the years that he's been able to take and then turn into a positive, which then sort of evolves and changes his approach and business model. But yes, good for him, not necessarily
good for the business,
good for the industry, but that's not his, it's not his prerogative to make the industry better. It's his prerogative to make his business better.
Yeah, so, very true.
Ultimately, you want to dominate your market share. That's capitalism.
Yeah.
So I've never had any issue with that, but I actually put a lot of that on ECW because ECW was the star.
Yeah, not the wrestlers. Yeah.
Before ECW, do you ever hear any fans chanting the 3 letters of the promotion?
No, you're right. And I never thought of it that way, but that's mind blowing. You're 100% right.
They took that culture that was a very underground sort of niche culture, and then WWE later on when they purchased it, they sort of highlighted it and kind of popularized it to a much wider audience. But they created a situation there where now it's like every promotion that comes out, an independent show that runs twice a year in Mississippi have got a belt. Why do you have a belt? What are you doing? Like, you know what I mean? And it's, but it because I think a lot of people who were fans in that era, like myself, if it was too difficult to become a wrestler, because being a wrestler is hard.
Of course,
there's a lot of skill involved. There's a lot of practice. You're not good at it right away, and obviously it hurts. And you got to have a really thick skin. You got to be able to take criticism. And obviously my generation are not well known for that. And so it's like, I think what happened is a lot of the guys from my generation, instead of, they maybe dreamed of being wrestlers, and then instead they went, no, I'll be a promoter, I'll be Paul Heyman. I'll be the guy who runs the show, and then everyone cheers for me when I'm standing in the ring, and everyone is chanting my promotion's name, and it became the new star. Like the promoters and the bookers and the stuff are the stars now, as much as the wrestlers. It's like, it's like, in movies, obviously you have famous directors, you have your Spielbergs, your Scorseses, your Tarantinos, and so forth. But, ultimately when they're promoting their movies and when they're pushing movies, the stars are the focal point.
Absolutely.
You're not getting, like, Tarantino might do a junket here and there and Scorsese and so forth, but they're not, they're not putting themselves front and center. Like, here's what I thought I should do for this film, and here's what I think, and here's my film, and here's what everyone thinks about my movie. And I kind of wish sometimes wrestling would sort of take a step back and go, do you want commercial success or do you want validation? And look, I've seen it up close, in lots of different places. So it's tough. It's a weird dichotomy to navigate, especially as a talent, because they're the ones who are taking the risk. So you're beholden to them in a way. But at the same time, sometimes there have been situations where I've just thought, like, just let the show speak for itself. Let the work speak for itself, and let these people, the longevity of a product in my opinion, in wrestling, has to be built on an emotional investment in the wrestlers,
Yeah,
in the characters.
of course. That's
Like,
what it's always been about.
yeah, there's
You
only
know?
there's only, to me, again, no, I'm not, this isn't this, that, again, people will hear all this and think it must be, oh, this must be a veiled shot at someone, but it's really
Yeah.
not. And
No, yeah,
I just, this, I've sort of taken I've tried to look at the whole business from from a different perspective. And I think as a business owner myself, I sort of look at it now more on that side of things as well.
of course.
And I don't know that there are times where I think that there are certain promotions and certain businesses that have had a real shot to be successful,
Yeah.
but haven't capitalized on it because the focus was more on the validation of the
Yeah.
management, right, and the ego, and rather than all right, like let's do what's it's become this sort of cliche thing because of the characters that Triple H and Stephanie do at the time, but it is best for business.
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
what's best for
Yeah.
business? But if Billy and Pat ever asked my opinion on anything, when that wasn't to do with my stuff, because obviously I always tried to take a very active role in my stuff.
Yeah.
But if I'm asked about wider stuff, almost always my two questions are: where is it going?
Mhm.
Where's the money?
Yeah.
So like, what's best for business? Like, where's the business in this? Like,
Yeah.
it starts with the wrestler. It has to. It starts
Agreed.
with emotion. What we're doing here is, if you boil it down, it's utterly absurd. You have to, so the thing that works long term is to get people invested in the individuals, in the characters.
Agreed.
Once they're invested and you have their trust, now it's a sort of very delicate game of trying to keep that trust.
Yeah.
With wrestling, more than anything else, wrestling is, to me, I'm a big believer in the 80-20 principle. And I think if you look at most wrestling promotions, I think the 80-20 principle is in pretty full effect. Like 80% of the interest, 80% of the revenue, 80% of the conversation, 80% of the buzz in general will be generated by 20% of the product.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like 4 or 5 guys or girls who are the ones who are kind of generating most of the interest. It's up to everyone else to sort of try to put themselves in that same bracket. But it's also up to the promotions to sort of understand that and lean into your strengths instead of trying to sort of play favorites or well, this is the plan and we're sticking to it and that's it. Like, I've decided this is what we're doing and that's that. And with my company, with Legacy Sports Nutrition, I think we have 25 products now, but 80% of the revenue is generated by about a fifth of the products.
Yeah,
like we've
absolutely.
got about 5 top sellers that outsell the others by a huge amount. So it's same sort of thing. It's a weird, if you look it up, right, the 80-20 principle, you'll be amazed in how many facets of life and business you see it again and again and again.
Absolutely.
And I think wrestling is very much about that. And I feel like I think wrestling in general used to understand and appreciate that and lean into it. And I think over the years, as it's become more over-engineered in general, people have tried to tinker with it.
Yeah.
Tinkering with wrestling, to me, in terms of sort of the business, in terms of the model, the overall model, I'm not talking about like the specifics of the product or styles or whatever, but whenever people have tried to sort of reinvent the wheel
Yeah.
Wrestling never worked.
Yep. Don't fix what ain't broke.
Wrestling, listen, man, wrestling is, I say this all the time, pro wrestling is burgers and fries,
Yep.
right? Like it's not necessarily great for you. It's not necessarily, it's not necessarily gourmet. It's not going to be like, it's not going to be something that wins an artistic award anytime soon or anything like that. But what it is it's a guilty pleasure, and it's enjoyable, once every now and then, once a week, a couple of times a week. Like, you treat yourself, and you know what you're getting, and you don't want it to be fucked around with.
Yeah. Yes. I love it. I think that's the best analogy.
Like, you can have a burger, you can go to a gourmet burger place and you can get, it's got,
this on it and that,
portobello mushrooms and, this and that on it, whatever. It's a brioche bun and it's all great. But, as long as just make sure that the meat is good quality and it's well cooked.
Yeah.
And don't put any bullshit in there that's just going to taste weird,
Yeah,
let me take a bite out of it and enjoy it and make sure the fries are good. And, you know what I'm saying?
I love it. Like, yeah, you're right on.
And when I think when wrestling gets off on the wrong exit is when it tries to kid itself into that they're not burgers and fries, and it tries to be a Michelin star restaurant,
Yeah.
There's nothing more pretentious than when people start trying to sort of articulate like the artistry of, wrestling and all this kind of thing. Look, man, I've watched there have been times where I've sat there and watched, the best to ever do it, Brett and Sean and Kurt Hennig and, AJ and Kurt Angle and and I'll be like, I go, man, this is artistry.
Yeah.
But not to actually sit there and like pontificate on,
why did he do this?
Yeah, like, just it's like, did it resonate with you? Did it push your buttons emotionally? Was it athletic and exciting and entertaining? Like,
yes.
Yes or no? Did it, like, at the end of the day, Hulk Hogan was not the best catch-as-catch-can wrestler in the world.
No, but it worked.
He touched a lot of people. Steve Austin wasn't the greatest catch-as-catch-can wrestler in the world. They were great workers.
Yeah.
But they touched you. They pushed your buttons. They touched you on an emotional level, and that's all wrestling really has to do.
Yeah, and you nailed it. Like, because people, I would always show people who were Hulk Hogan critics to watch his stuff in Japan. You want to see him wrestle, you know what I mean?
His match with Great Muta from whatever it is, 93.
Doing an enziguri and
it's
pull holds and
because it was so cool because New Japan back then, I loved their presentation. They were like great. They were streets ahead of even WWF back then.
Oh, like their dome shows were.
They look like rock concerts. I mean, there's huge stage and like these cool lights, and it had like this sort of smoky. It looked like a rock concert, and it was like, I remember the first time I saw it, being like, "Wow, what is this? This is unbelievable." Like, what year was this? 1993. And then you compare it to like WCW and like and what they were doing, and it was like
like light years ahead of it.
These guys were. But what grabbed me was that it was the big larger than life presentation, and that sort of I've always said that wrestling is built around moments, not matches.
Absolutely, and again, like to that point, like you talk about, and people would go, I'd show them Hogan in Japan, they go, why didn't he do that here? And I go, he didn't have to. He didn't have to.
Well, more importantly, the market didn't demand it.
No, exactly. They didn't care about wrist locks and all that stuff. Hogan came out to the music. He ripped the shirt. He posed. He dropped the leg, the comeback, the whole nine. And that was.
Why? It's like saying why doesn't McDonald's sell sushi?
Yeah, because they don't have to.
Because people ain't going to McDonald's for that.
Yeah. Yes.
There's nothing wrong. Like, I love sushi. It's one of my favorite foods, but I ain't going to McDonald's for it.
Yeah, exactly. and to a point you made earlier about, and I had talked with recently Austin Idol. He's a good friend of Wrestler Weekly, and we were talking about simple but effective, and he talked
Yes.
about some things that he did. And
Yes.
I brought up, it might have been to him or it might have been to somebody else, but I said, go back, I said, and watch the Road Warriors and the Midnight Express, Starrcade 86, the scaffold match.
Fantastic.
It still holds up because I remember going, the Midnight Express beat the crap out of the Road Warriors.
Right.
It was the first time the Road Warriors had ever been put down on television, that somebody had knocked them down like that. And is that match a technical classic? No. They're scared to be up there, but it works. Every little thing from Condrey throwing the powder to just even the ending with Cornette falling off the thing.
The Midnights, in many ways, represented, I think, like the sweet spot of fast-paced, athletic, exciting style of wrestling.
Absolutely.
But never at the expense of suspension of disbelief.
Yeah, absolutely.
The Midnight and Rock and Roll and Flair and Steamboat, to me, represented the absolute perfect sweet spot of what I just described.
Absolutely.
Anything more elaborate than that starts to look choreographed.
Yeah.
You know, anything, and in many ways, you know, again, it's what I was talking about before. You know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah.
All that really, like, no one would ever have got tired of watching those type of matches over and over again.
No,
like,
not at all. And that's why they hold up so well.
Because really, the work in the ring is not the thing that needs to evolve as much as there's the characters.
Yeah, absolutely.
I get so tired of the hollow argument to, like, when someone goes out and has just like an egregiously fake looking match.
Yeah.
I hate the hollow argument of, like, it's just the business evolving. You know, it's just this. No, because everyone that came before worked with a sort of gentleman's agreement and understanding that you did as much as you could without compromising the legitimacy of it, without compromising the suspension of disbelief. Like, to me, I'm sorry, once you got two guys who were like stopping and like looking at each other and being like, oh, you go this way, no, you go that way, you know, and like standing there.
It's a dance routine, like
moving out the way and like pushing them on the ass so they can keep running, and, you know, just they're silly, you know. And to me, I just sort of go like, what? That's not a good worker.
Yeah.
Like, that's what you know what I call it? I call it wrestling school wrestling.
Yeah.
It's like, because it's a drill. You're running a drill. Like, that's okay. That's okay in practice.
Yeah.
But like, to me, it's that if you have a match where like the cooperation is too obvious.
Yeah.
It would be the equivalent of a movie where the guys are holding their scripts in their hand.
Yeah.
Well, like, it doesn't really matter how well you deliver the line, because I can see you reading the fucking script.
Well, and that's like, have you ever seen that move where the guy does the double stomp on the guy in the Tree of Woe, and the guy in the Tree of Woe is holding onto the ropes to be in position? I hate that. I'm like, it just looks, and I hate to use the word, but it looks fake. Like, you know?
Yeah, there's unfortunately, there used to be like a couple of moves that I would call groaners that I would sort of go, okay, you know, not my cup of tea, whatever. That list now, unfortunately, is like a couple of pages.
Yeah.
You know, like, so I sort of go like, how could this ever have looked realistic?
No,
you know,
it
like,
just doesn't work.
Just the basic like some of the stuff that happens now is like just the basic premise of it
just doesn't make sense.
It doesn't, even to begin with.
Like, that would never happen. You know what I mean? Like, in any position.
Again, and I'm just describing my taste, you know, and I'm not referring to
same
anyone
here,
or anything in particular. But look, it's it saddens me when the only argument that gets made is like, well, it's, you know, it's just evolution. It's like, no, I don't think it is, because evolution of the business is more like when the Attitude Era, you know, the characters were not, it was more about like the work in the ring didn't change that much.
Yeah, but it was like, the edginess of the characters.
The late 80s compared to the late 90s, the work in the ring didn't change that much. It did change,
Yeah.
And there were definitely more big moves. Like, the one thing that's always happened is like, the severity of a finishing maneuver has had to sort of,
Yeah.
sort of increase over time. And honestly, my generation, we reached the point where of no return, where it was like,
Yeah.
there is no more devastating moves we can do to one another. So now it's just a case of we have to do them multiple times.
Yeah.
But but if you take the Attitude Era and compare it to the late 80s, it's a totally different presentation in terms of the characters.
Oh yeah.
And that's really all that was required.
Yeah, because it wasn't about, you weren't talking about, oh, this guy had, if somebody went out there and had a great match, it was like gravy. You know what I mean? It was the bonus.
Yeah, right, exactly. Well, to me, I've always said, a truly great match, a lot of the work has been done before the bell rings.
Absolutely.
You can't have to me, I personally, and again, like, this is just my opinion, because one of my rules is there's no such thing as best or worst anything in wrestling. It's your favorite, right? Yeah. There is no best wrestler. There's no best match. It's your favorite.
No, it's subjective.
Your favorite wrestler, your favorite match. But when you look at sort of to me, the matches that sort of really that stick with me and resonate with me, I don't think you can have a great match. Or, well, I say you can't, but it's very difficult to have a great match if no one knows anything about you and your opponent, or any reason why you guys are wrestling.
Yeah, you have to care about it.
One of my favorite matches of all time, probably my favorite match of all time, is Brett and Mr. Perfect, but it's the one from King of the Ring '93.
Yes.
So it's and that match is, and a lot of people will hear this and go, well, hold on a minute, that match wasn't a hot angle. There was no, heat or no like perfect, but those guys were known as like great rivals.
Yeah.
And it was a semi-final, so it had a different, and that match was so well done because they wrestled like it was the semi-finals.
Yeah.
They told stories about, they did all these little details in the match to highlight the fact that, like, I've got to win, but I've also got to make sure I don't get too hurt because I've still got to wrestle again.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was this very competitive, and the animosity sort of grew over time based out of a sort of competitiveness with each other, out of a sort of ego.
And even in the promo beforehand, right? It's a quick 2-minute thing. Well, my dad was better than your dad.
Yeah, your dad never beat my dad. Yeah, right. So it was just enough to be like, we're just going to remind everyone that these guys are kind of salty with each other.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, the devil's in the details, because the promo fit the match, and the way it's, now, if they'd have done a promo where it was like, I hate your guts, and if it's the last thing I do, I'm going to make sure that you breathe your last breath. Okay, you can't have that match.
No, exactly.
But I see a lot of stuff now where it's like the match doesn't fit the package, it doesn't fit the promo, it doesn't fit the build.
I've seen that where guys who, hey buddy, how are you?
Good.
Your dad just mentioned you in a promo. How cool was that to be talked about on TV?
Yeah.
Run along.
But yeah, you see so many of these where they have these scathing promos, and then they go and they're opening with like chain wrestling, and I'm like, you guys hate each other, right? Like, act like it.
yeah. Like, and again, maybe it's just me, but I feel like somewhere along the way, the focus of the performance shifted from like emotional investment to artistic execution.
Yeah.
And really what happened was that, everyone went for the low-hanging fruit of trying to impress the most dedicated fans.
Yeah.
And look, you're one of them. So there's no offense to you or anyone who is that dedicated to the business. But it's kind of like, my thing was always like, well, we've got their money.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, they're coming. Like, it's an analogy I use a lot, and I know I'm full of analogies, but it's like
I love it.
It's like the if you own a bar, right, or a pub, and you've got your regulars, and they come every day, and they sit at the bar, and between each of them might spend on average about $20 a night. They get a couple of rounds, they get, whatever. But it's not enough to sustain you.
No, absolutely.
You're really grateful that they're there every day. You're really grateful that they
absolutely.
come. They're your best customers. Yeah. So you might go above and beyond for them and be like, hey, every now and then, but hey, this one's on the house, or hey,
absolutely.
Hey, here's a basket of fries, whatever. You guys, he's on the house, you go dig in, whatever, like little things. But you can't sit there and go like ignore trying to get everyone else in to fill the rest of the table.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it'd be like, okay, so hey, we're gonna do, we're gonna start having a comedy night where on Fridays we have an open mic night and comedians come in. If all the regulars go, oh no, you can't do that, you can't do that, you can't go, well, hey, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unless you guys are gonna each start spending 10 grand a day.
Yeah. We gotta make some money.
I'm sorry, I've gotta get more customers. And I feel like that's sort of what's happened to the business, is that like all the companies just started going, well, these guys on Twitter really don't like it, so I better do more stuff that they like, so I better fill the show with the kind of wrestling and the kind of wrestlers that they like.
They're a very vocal minority,
Well, look at NXT, perfect example.
Yeah.
They went right, well, we're gonna do all this, we're gonna have all the cool guys, we're gonna be the cool kids, like we're gonna have all that. And what happened? Like it didn't work because they didn't understand that the marketing of those type of wrestlers is the basis of the marketing of those guys is that they are not in WWE.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
The whole emphasis of the marketing is that they're cool underground, like, unsigned, like music, they're the underground unsigned sort of bands.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
And so WWE tries to do it, and it's like, no, like that. Now that's it's not.
It's different. And it's gone. The honeymoon's over.
AEW comes along, and everyone went, hell yeah, that's for us. You know why? Because it's not WWE.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like people like to have an alternative.
Yeah.
So I think WWE, I think they hurt themselves in their, like, I think they spent the last decade really like leaning into like what the internet thinks and what the most vocal minority thinks and really pandering to them.
Yeah.
Only to find out that you get burned doing that because those fans are they're sort of recreationally unhappy.
Yeah, well, that's their whole gimmick. Yeah.
Like that's what they enjoy doing, is they enjoy picking everything apart and complaining about it.
Yeah, like they'll just never be
cool. Like it's I'm sorry you hate everything, but we're trying to run a business. I see all these people on Twitter, and especially the ones that have like podcasts and like good strong followings and stuff, and they sort of make these declarations like they sort of declare things that are just their opinion, but they now sort of try to declare it as like a rule of the land, let's all do this. And no, let's stop forcing your opinion on everyone. But
let people just, it's like you said, right? It's subjective. Enjoy what you enjoy, and nobody else's opinion about it should matter.
I see this stuff, and I saw them sort of pandering to this stuff, and I thought to myself, this is a really risky game, because yes, those people spend more per head, but like that's their thing, is that like they're enamored by something that is like the antithesis of the big market leader juggernaut. They're enamored by that, so they want to, but I see these people, and they spend every minute of their day they're on social media sort of lamenting about everything that's wrong with every wrestling show. And I just feel like at some point, if you wrote, you own one of these, look, I've been subjected to it. We all have. I just sort of get to a point where I sort of look at it and go, I'm sorry that you're so upset, but I'll see you next week.
Yeah. It's because you'll be back.
It's like, all right, cool. Like, I don't know.
But you're right on the money. You're right on the money. And, and that's part of what we want to do, is we want folks to be able to enjoy what they want to enjoy. And that's our whole gimmick, is wrestling meant something to us. and what it brought out in us and the good memories that it did. And so we're trying to be a positive corner in the sometimes toxic world of social media. But one of the things I wanted to bring up with you, and then I'll let you get going, is the success that not only that you've had, but that your wife, Mickie James, has had. What did it mean to you to see Empower, her have such a big role with that, but it also just be the success that it was, and I think just the tip of the iceberg for where women's wrestling will go in the future?
Yeah, I mean, it was a great relief that, to see it work so well, because obviously, she poured, she really dedicated a lot of time and hours to it, and it's hard. Like being in the position that she was in for that show is a thankless job, because she didn't have the authority to pay the girls, or to sort of take, so essentially what she was a sort of, she was the executive producer, but that's a sort of a title. Really what she was a sort of senior advisor, right? In the sense that, like, ultimately it still came down to Billy. Billy was still making every decision there, and making the business deals with Tony or whoever, and with Impact and so forth. So, but unfortunately, when you get in a position like that, every girl who, and it's not just the girls, I'm just in general, but when Mickie had the courage to put herself in that firing line, because it's like, if a girl's upset about a hotel, or one of the girls doesn't like what match she's in, or she thinks that she should have got paid more, or whatever it may be, it's like some of that heat goes on Mickie. She has no part of that. She, what I mean, her sort of, her mission was put together a great show, and sort of book the card and like work on the presentation of it, and the match order and and so on, and help produce the matches and get it. And so there's a lot of tears, a lot of stress, a lot of drama, and all I could think of, because I had my own shit to worry about,
you were in the main event the next night, right?
Yeah, well, and I was unofficially in the same spot, for the 73 show.
Okay.
It's just I'm just not, but just to sort of don't sort of never, I just don't, but it's not put, I'm not sort of positioned that way publicly, right? But it's like I had as active a role in all of that.
Absolutely.
And so again, I'm well aware of how that can sort of get heat on you, because every wrestler that leaves and goes somewhere else and is upset about something, they start some of that, you get some of that heat on you, It's like, I didn't like my contract, or oh, fucking Nick Aldis is in office, it's not true. It's like, I'm just trying to help, whatever, right? But all the while, with all of this stress and all the sort of stuff leading up to it, because trust me, working with Billy Corgan on that kind of stuff is not easy. He's a strong personality, a strong ego, and and obviously a lot of people involved in this are not particularly experienced. So it's like, so there's a lot to navigate. All I could think of the whole time was like, God, this show has to be great. This show has to be a home run, like with all of this effort and stuff put into it. I hope to God that like the people are with it, and it was I've had most of the time now I have a pretty good sense of knowing like how the people are going to be, and the level of enthusiasm and stuff. Obviously leading up to All In, it was kind of like there was Cody and I kind of knew going into Chicago, like we'd have to be especially inept to screw this up. And same with 73. It's like it sold out so quickly, and set like a box office record for the fairground. So again, we were kind of like, okay, we'll be fine. Same with the Crockett Cup with Marty and I. We could feel the level of interest. So again,
it was great.
Like, I think we know how this is going to go. But I got that same vibe for St. Louis. But I got it first for 73 because I was closer to it.
Yeah,
You know, I was
absolutely.
trying to gauge, you know, the empower stuff, but it was much more online as opposed to sort of in the local community, because I
Of
was
course.
very active in the St. Louis community, and I love St. Louis, and that community were fantastic. But I was getting that feedback from them more for 73, and so I had this feeling like 73 is going to be going off, like, you know, these are.
Yeah.
But because Empower attracted a sort of different kind of crowd, it was more sort of the hardcore wrestling, you know, crowd, and so it was a little bit harder to gauge, right? Because obviously, you know, stuff can be disproportionately presented online.
Yeah.
Right? It can feel like everyone's talking about it, you know,
Yeah.
and then, you know, 50
Might
people.
not be accurate. Yeah.
Yeah, and so to hear how great that crowd was, I watched most of that show from the back of the room. Like I was, you know, me and a few of the boys kind of sat in the back of the room and kind of watched from like near the control. Like some of the production stuff was in that corner, and most of us sort of watching it. And yeah, I mean, you know, every girl on that show, and some of those girls were very green. Like I have to admit, I was very skeptical about some of the matches on that card.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like going into it, not because of women's wrestling or anything like that.
Yeah.
I was confident that there was interest in this in the concept, but there was a few matches I was a bit like, some of these girls are very green,
Yeah.
like very inexperienced, and there's a lot of pressure on this show.
Yeah.
And that's a testament to Mickey's talent as a producer, because she put together, she worked really hard on that card to make sure that everybody's strengths were highlighted and weaknesses were hidden, and you know, and everything was, and that is really the essence of a great producer or a great booker or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, that's so cool.
That is the number one skill set required, is to know what you're working with and get the most out of them.
Yeah.
And she did it, and it was tremendous. And to see, for me, the other part of that was I was so proud of her, was when she wrestled Kylie Ray the next night.
Yeah.
Was the reaction that the crowd gave her the next night, because it was almost like a kind of acknowledgement of like,
yeah,
you know. And I remember Conrad was on commentary, and he even said, you know, Mickey's the talk of the town after last night. You know, and I was like, damn, man, that's great. Like,
yeah,
that's
deservedly so.
And it, you know, it brought a tear to her eye, you know, and it meant so much to her to sort of have that, because look, WWE, they fuck with people's heads.
No, absolutely.
You know, they destroy people's confidence, like deliberately. And I've just never understood why anyone would, you know, I just think it's such a horrible energy to live in.
Yeah.
You know, for people who sort of, you know, the people involved in that organization who sort of go out of their way to try to sort of hurt people's careers. You know, I just think that's, you know, that's a horrible way to live your life, and karma's gonna fucking get you. But it's like, so, you know, I think I never wanted it to be about that.
Yeah.
But knowing that and being close to it, just, you know, just to see her, how well she was received, and how much the true fans went, no, we remember how great you are, like, you know, and we're going to let you know. Like, that was important. And, you know, she tore the house down, and then I went out and tore the house down. So
yes, you did.
And we went out, well, that night, and the Chase, you know, they sent a bottle of champagne to our room, and, you know, we had a beautiful suite that night at the Chase. It was like,
that's great.
It was one of those nights where you sort of like, where we looked at all of it and went, you know, this is kind of what I had in mind when I wanted to be a pro wrestler.
Yeah.
You know, you tore the house down, I tore the house down. The place took great care of us. We go back to our suite. There's a bottle of champagne on ice waiting for us. You know, it was like,
job well done. Yeah.
Right. You got to take those moments when you can and savor them, you know.
Absolutely. Folks, this has been one of the most fun interviews I've ever done. A special thanks to Nick Aldis, Mickey James, the NWA. Really quickly too, Nick, you know, before we hop off here, can you tell the fans about Legacy Supplements, where they can get them? And we'll be having too, you'll see us with a promo code for you. We'll give you all that information on Wrestler Weekly. But Nick, really quickly, if you wanted to tell the folks about it and where they can get their supplements.
Yeah, I launched Legacy Sports Nutrition at the end of 2020, and we've had some incredible growth. We've got products ranging from testosterone boosters, sleep aids, and fat burners, and all of the kind of the typical kind of sports nutrition stuff. But we also have a women's line that Mickey heads up. Mickey's the director of the women's line, Her Legacy. So there's a range of products that are designed specifically for women's bodies, to enhance performance and well-being. And we have the wellness line, which is organic greens and superfoods and MCT oils and apple cider vinegar gummies and stuff like that, to just for your overall health, wellness, and performance. We've got nootropics. The Total Mind is a great product for your brain and cognitive function. And we've got everything, immunity boosters and pre-workouts, and we've got stuff that's designed to be to help relaxation. It's just a whole bunch of stuff that's, and I really believe in the products. I use them myself. We've developed all of them with the team and at the manufacturer. Everything is made in the US. Everything is made in an FDA inspected facility. Everything is GMP certified. And we've had some incredible growth, and we've had interest from nationwide retailers, right away. So we're sort of almost playing catch up with the growth, which is a good problem to have. But you can check it all out at Legacy Supps. It's LEGACYSUPPS.com, LegacySupps.com, and all of the products are on there. There's different ranges and collections and stacks, and check it out. It's not just for the super dedicated body guys. It's for everyone. And nowadays, like, I think especially men are starting to realize that you got to stay on top of your testosterone.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's all well and good to go to a clinic and get the shots, but I always say to people, kind of like, you want to wait as long as possible before you start doing that. Because once you start doing TRT, it's kind of like you've got to keep doing it, because it will, it shuts down your own natural production. So it's kind of like, if you can take Test X9 or the Test Stack, and it can stimulate your natural testosterone production, it's going to help your overall health and well-being and performance and drive and sex drive and energy and all of that stuff for longer. And I think some of the case studies we've had and some of the feedback we've had from some people, like I just had a thing, a couple of days ago reached out and was like, I started a workout plan and a diet plan, and then I bought some X-Lean and Recovery PM from you guys, and I've lost 32 pounds, in 5 weeks or something.
Oh, that's awesome.
I love hearing that stuff.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, it's so easy for people to just be like, buy this stuff, you remember the old, I used to subscribe to all the Weeder magazines, and you'd have the before and afters, and it would be like the same guy, and you could tell it's the same day, but he's got no tan in the first picture.
Yeah.
And he's like pushing his gut out. We've never done any of that. We've never we never tried to overinflate the sort of the results.
No bullshit here.
but if you're consistent with it and you stay consistent with your diet and exercise, and you're consistent with your supplement regime, you'll see profound gains. And all of our products are available to subscribe to as well. So you can subscribe, and they'll just send it to you every month.
Oh, that's awesome. That's really cool. Well, folks, like I said, LegacySupps.com
is key.
Yeah, absolutely. So men, women, there's these great products out there. Take care of your health. It's a really great thing that Nick and Mickey are doing. And we just can't thank you guys so much enough for this season that we've done. We hope to bring you more in the future. Write to us. Let us know. Follow us at Wrestler Weekly, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And let us know who you want to see. We couldn't have had a better season that we had. couldn't have had a better season finale than the champ himself, Nick Aldis. And you guys, thank you so much. We'll see you for season 4 soon. Thank you and have a great one. And